Good morning, my name is Hallie and I work here in the reptiles department at Australia Zoo. Today we'll be showing you our poison dart frogs and the whole life cycle from a tadpole all the way to an adult frog. So this morning we are up at our Roberts Reptile House display habitat. We have 13 adults living in here full time. They're scattered around this morning. We're just doing our morning service, and our morning service consists of a light mist down for all of our plants. These are all live, and also just a general health check of all of our frogs. It can be a little challenging to find all 13, so this does take some time. Once we've spotted them all, we can then begin to feed them. So when you're looking at our poison dart frogs, the most obvious thing you probably notice is their coloration of their skin. So here in this habitat we have one type called the Dendrobates tinctorius. Their coloration ranges from this really light blue colour and that really beautiful yellow on top. Now this is called aposematism out in the wild. It's to mimic a poisonous or a venomous animal. Now here in human care they actually don't have any poisons, and that's because out in the wild they eat a type of toxic ant. Now here in human care and at Australia Zoo we feed them pinhead crickets or those flightless fruit flies, so they actually lack those toxins in their skin in human care. So mating and courtship is actually quite complex for such a small species of little frog. So the males is where it all begins. So the boy will let out a really low frequent vibration, sort of a call from his throat. It'll signal that the girl that he has found a nice place for those eggs. So he will actually find his own perfect little spot, say in a little bromeliad leaf where there's a lot of moisture. He'll call the girl will then choose to come to him. She might like him, she might not. If she decides to continue, she'll actually deposit her eggs then and there. She can lay anywhere from about 5 on average eggs. We've seen clutches up to 12 here at Australia Zoo, which is pretty cool. The boy will then come in after the female and fertilise those eggs externally. Once those eggs are then fertilised, the male will stay with those eggs in the bromeliad leaf until they become a tadpole. He will then actually transport them up on his back one by one at a time into a nicer puddle of water. They will then turn into a little froglet from there. So we are now here in our dedicated frog breeding room, where we have specifically chosen each and every individual frog to be paired, mainly because of their different genetics. So it's in the population's best interest for each and every one of these frogs to be able to breed, so we can bring through those new young for the population as a whole. So in each and every one of these individual habitats, we have to keep it very, very specific to be able to achieve successful breeding. You'll notice that there's lots of plant coverage, so they can choose to breed inside these bromeliad leaves like they would out in the wild, but we've also added these really fancy coconuts for them. If you lift this coconut husk up, you'll actually see a small little petri dish filled with a little bit of water. This is where the female can then deposit those eggs. We can then come in really easily, stress-free to the frogs, and just remove those eggs so we can actually rear them separately. So we can leave this petri dish inside with the eggs and let the frogs rear them themselves. However, to get the best chance of survival, we actually remove these and rear them in a separate habitat. So last night, it was super exciting. We actually had another clutch of eggs from this female. She laid 4, which is a pretty decent sized number. You can see they're actually encased with the little jelly as well, which is really cool. There's a little bit of water still from where we had put that in. So now we'll put these over into their egg habitat where they'll stay for about a month until they turn into those little tadpoles. So far we have 19 fresh tadpoles, which is really exciting. You can see all of them are kept individually. You might have noticed before that the tadpoles are actually together. However, they are cannibalistic, so it's in their best interest to separate them at that stage and rear them individually until they actually become a froglet. Now this whole process is what we call the Gosner stages. So they are going through a lot of changes within themselves to become a froglet. It takes a lot of time, it takes many months for all of those changes to happen, and we are really lucky that you can see pretty much all of the stages here today. So here in this little cup we have a little tinctorius tadpole. He was laid on the 7th of March this year and hatched on the 4th of April. So that whole process is about a month long, so it's pretty intensive. It takes many weeks and they undergo quite a lot of changes. He's quite large now, so he's doing nice and well. His daily care consists of a small water change to remove the waste and then adding a little bit of food daily as well. Now these guys are insectivores when they're this young, so he's eating anything from bloodworms, insects, but also spirulina flakes is what we feed them here at the zoo, which is pretty much just an insect-based fish pellet. Now in this cup we have a much older tadpole. He was laid on the 31st of December and hatched out on the 23rd of January. So he is way larger. He has actually just developed those hind legs, which is his first step of becoming an actual froglet, which is really exciting. You'll see he is way bigger than the rest. He's got little eyeballs. He's even developed that little frog mouth, which is super sweet. He is still eating. He's also starting to develop his little pattern, which will stick with him till he is an adult frog. And now with this last one, we have pretty much the final stages of turning into a little froglet. So his hind legs have fully developed. He's actually got his little front legs too. He has all of his adult colors. And now he's starting to absorb that tail. So he has stopped eating those fish pellets and now he's actually using all of his energy and resources into absorbing that tail. So he won't actually eat for about 2 weeks. The whole process takes about that whole length and then he will start to come out onto land. Now you'll see he is in a container with a lot less water. So we actually tilt this up so he can then begin to transition out into a froglet and on land himself. So we don't have to rush him. He just comes out when he's ready. So once they have fully absorbed that tail and ventured out onto land, they then become what we have in this habitat, which is a fully ready froglet. Now he weighs a whopping 0.24 of a gram and he is growing a little bit every day. He is starting to eat his food. He's even luring it, which is super sweet to watch. He eats about 4 pinhead crickets every few days, so it's not a lot of food at all. He doesn't quite have his bright colors. He's trying to stay nice and hidden while he's such a small little frog. It will take him now 2 whole years to reach the maturity of the adults that you saw up in the reptile house. So we actually have 2 tadpoles that have just hatched and it's time to move them into their individual cups to begin the process of turning into a froglet. We've made up a little license to swim, which includes their laid date, their hatch date, and who the parents are. So we'll put that on their little cup so we can tell who is who. And now we use this little straw to divide them up and to move them across. We use this little straw just because they are really delicate and sensitive little creatures. They are very small at this size, so we just don't want to cause much stress on them. So in their individual cups that they're going into, you'll see the water is a weak tea color. This is what we call a tadpole tea. Tadpole tea is pretty much just made up of reverse osmosis water, which is the type of system that we use here at Australia Zoo. It just gets rid of all of those toxins and the chlorine out of that water, so it's nice and healthy for our sensitive frogs. To then add those good nutrients back into the water, we add that Indian almond leaf, which releases tannins into the water. We also have the Java moss, which gets rid of any nitrites, just to keep the water quality nice and healthy for these little tadpoles. So the main difference between an adult frog and, say, our little froglets is typically just the size. They are fully developed, so they lack that tail that they once had. And they mature at about 2 to 3 grams for the little boys. The girls can be anywhere up to about 4 grams to 5 we see in this habitat. So our dendrobates are found in the northern parts of South America. You can find them in really dense rainforests, exactly how we've set up this habitat here in the reptile house today. So your root systems, they are quite arboreal, meaning they can spend a lot of the time up off the ground, but also they like this area on the ground where they can actually come down to hunt for their food. So out in the wild, where poison dart frogs are native to, we're actually really lucky that they are what we call least concern, meaning their numbers are pretty stable, which is really great. Here in Australia, we don't have too many. We have a population of about 60 in total across about 3 different zoos, and we are lucky enough to be one of the main breeders for the program of dart frogs in Australia. So that is the reason for us having them, is to mainly just teach people about the frogs and the importance of having frogs. Frogs are a really great indication of a healthy environment. So without frogs, our environment is really, really impacted. So they won't be anywhere where there's bad water quality, pollutants, or just habitat loss in general. Now, frogs are a really great food source for other animals, so taking the frogs out of those habitats also removes all of the potential predators that are eating these guys as well. Out in the wild, these guys don't have many natural predators, being such a brightly coloured species and having those toxins out in the wild. However, illegal poaching and deforestation, habitat loss, is their main threats today. Thanks so much for joining us today. We hope to see you here at Australia Zoo in Roberts Reptile House, where you can spot our dart frogs on display.
Watch out! Whoa, 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 whoa. Danger, danger, danger. I thought you clicked on that. Now, whatever you do, don't click on it. That's danger, remember? No clicking, no clicking.